Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. Thank you for zooming in. My name is Doug Bruhnke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber, and this is the 5th annual Women in Global Leadership. It's as long as Global Chamber's been around, we've been doing this event in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're doing this event now around the world as well. We think it's important because why not bring women to the table? Our gut says and our own experience says that when women are at the table, we develop better strategies, we do better implementation, and we're more successful internationally. The data also tends to prove that as well. And so we are very focused as an organization to make sure that we're gender balanced. And I know everybody here on the panel today and the mayor of Phoenix who will be joining us, Mayor Kate Gallego, feels the same way. I'd like to first introduce, before I make any more comments, to my co-moderator in crime, Mel Sanderson. I'd like to just say a few words about Mel. She is amazing. You know, she most recently has been the head of international for a major US organization. She spent 20 years in the Foreign Service, and that included, I think, about 8 posts. But a lot of her posts have been in the DRC and in Africa. And if you ever need anybody to get in contact with anyone in the DRC, talk to Mel, because she still knows everybody. And she generally knows everybody, period. So we're really pleased to have her co-moderating today and helping with the discussion. Mel, thank you for all that you do, and really appreciate your contributions to Global Chamber, which includes the head of our Global Advisory Board, and for contributing today.
Thanks for having me, Doug. I'll be sure to keep a close eye on you and keep your male brain under control today.
Thank you very much. I think Sanjeev was saying before we started, his mother keeps him in line. And I think in my case, it's the same thing. My mother, for 18 years, had my brain saying, you know, women deserve a place at the table, you know. And I think, quite honestly, in her case, it was because she felt slighted, that she was always the smart person on Jeopardy. She was always the smart person at work, and she wasn't given the opportunities that she should. And then we as children learned, you know, from her own frustration, and that didn't seem fair to me. And as I've had a career, I've noticed women who were a lot smarter than me, not getting the same kinds of opportunities. And to me, that seems really unfair and kind of stupid, actually, for companies to think that way. So I'm very happy and proud that we as an organization focus in on this area. And just about an hour ago, I was speaking with our Kenya Executive Director for Global Chamber, and Emmanuel Mangi, and he was saying, Doug, I'm really excited about gender balance, and I'm happy to report that 12 out of the 30 advisory board members for Nairobi, Kenya are women, 12 and 18 men. So he was very much focused in on that, and I think that's going to add to his success. I wanted to, Mel, just say a few words and then turn over to the mayor in terms of some data. You've been a panelist on this event in the past, and Jaime has been very great Jaime Daddona has been very great in sharing some information. I do want to say that we are now up to, for global advisory boards around the world, 20.8% of them are women. The board members are women, up from 17.9% 3 years ago. And so about 1% a year improvement on that. In the Fortune 500, only 33 of the CEOs are women. And that despite the fact that women get the majority of degrees in colleges, and they also represent about 50% of the workplace. They represent 6% of CEOs in the top 3,000 companies in the US. That's doubled in the last decade. So up from 3% to 6%, way too low. Mel, do you happen to know the top 2 countries in the world where the highest percentage of CEOs and companies are?
I don't, but just for the sake of amusement, I'll guess. How about Sweden and the Netherlands?
those would be really good guesses. I would have guessed Iceland as well, but it's actually Thailand is number one, believe it or not. And
Wow.
number two is the People's Republic of China. So it's still, in Thailand's case, it's only 30%, but still that's, much higher than the US. And then the PRC is around 20%. So there are places of opportunity around the world where people have advanced, and there are a lot of other places where there's a lot more progress to be made. So let's kick off today with the presentation by Mayor Kate Gallego. She is an extraordinary leader. She happens to be the youngest big city mayor in the United States. I don't know about the world, but perhaps that's the case. She's spent 5 years as a leader in the city council for the city of Phoenix. She did a variety of accomplishments, including helping with and leading the citywide transportation plan that got adopted by the city of Phoenix, despite lots of slings and arrows of people who opposed progress. She has a variety of international experience, both prior and now as mayor, and very proud of her accomplishments, particularly with attracting companies from around the world, and in particular Taiwan most recently. So we're interested to hear, maybe she'll mention something about that. And even more recently, the city and the mayor have helped support the Export League program pioneered by Global Chamber to help regional companies be more successful virtually by getting new business around the world from the city of Phoenix. So we're really appreciative not only of you being here, Mayor Kate, but also for all that you do and your perspectives on advancing the city of Phoenix and the region into the world. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to Global Chamber for convening this event for now 5 years in a row. I've been honored to participate before, and I'm so glad that it continues even during the era of COVID. Everyone is safe and logged in via Zoom, and it is quite a prestigious group. I am excited to be with. Mel won our big award at the city for international presence, and we are grateful for all she is doing to build a more global Phoenix and really to represent the entire United States, but we're calling her our own. And an amazing group of panelists. I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with some of them, but excited. Even a member of my team, Laura Franco-French, is part of the panel, and I am lucky to have her as my advisor for international economic development. She's done national work and state level work, but we all like to say that the real work gets done at the city, so no wonder that she wanted to be at the city. Part of the reason we get great work done at the city is that we have strong partners like the Global Chamber. So thank you, Doug, for what you've done to make us an export-oriented city and to help build our brand internationally. We are the 5th largest city in the country, but as we've talked about before, not everyone nationally and internationally knows about what's happening in Phoenix. And as I've worked on projects such as international air service development, I will argue with airline CEOs about whether San Francisco or Phoenix is a bigger city, whether Seattle or Phoenix is a bigger city. And it turns out we're bigger than both of them combined. But I still have some work to do about telling the story of Phoenix, and I will need partners like the Global Chamber, Thunderbird, and others who can tell that story. I'm also very appreciative of this event's focus on women. Before running for mayor, I worked at the Salt River Project for about a decade and did a fair amount of work with the Arizona-Mexico Commission Water Committee. And I remember regularly being the only woman in the room. I don't think it was a huge impediment to me, but I was very conscious of it. And so it's nice to be intentional and talk about how we make sure we recognize women and that we have more opportunities for women in international arenas. We do have a good story right now, I would say, at the city of Phoenix. We had a major delegation about a year ago to Taiwan, which Doug mentioned, and I had the opportunity to travel with our sister cities program leader, Rita Marco, Councilwoman Deborah Stark, who is our council lead on our relationship with Taiwan, and our city's economic development director, Christine Mackey. We are lucky to have Hank Marshall leading our international programs, but he was not on that trip. And so the folks in Taiwan were asking me, do you have any men in leadership in international programs in Phoenix? Which did make me chuckle, but it is I think a credit to our city that we do have such a diverse leadership group working on these issues. It was a very successful trip. We recognized one of our oldest sister city relationships, which is with Taipei, Taiwan. Mayor Ko has visited Phoenix regularly, and I was glad to have the chance to visit Taiwan and return the favor and learn about some of the amazing things their city is doing on smart cities to encourage innovation, and that the entire country is doing on advanced manufacturing. I got to celebrate my birthday there last year during that delegation to Taiwan. And so I have one of my favorite pictures of it is I have a birthday cake that says happy 40th anniversary Phoenix, and then they put my candle in the middle of the cake. And they heard Americans really like sugar and sweets, so they put a bunch of extra frosting on it because apparently we just need our sugar in America. So the ratio of frosting was like frosting to cake, which is the way that my 3-year-old son has always felt it should be. There's always too much cake and not enough frosting. But it was a fun birthday and a great to have a celebration with international flavor, as well as my first pineapple birthday cake. One of our big goals on that trip was a partnership with Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC. They are the folks who make, among many other products, the semiconductor chip that is in your iPhone. They were looking for a very advanced fabrication facility to locate in the United States, and we were trying to convince them that Phoenix was the place to go. We have since announced that that facility is in fact coming to Phoenix, which is the biggest economic development announcement in our city's history and happened during the pandemic. The fact that it happened during the pandemic made it even more meaningful to me because we're all having these conversations about how are we going to come out of COVID-19? What is the future of our cities? Are we still going to have strong international relationships? And particularly in that region of the world, there's a lot of political conversations about China and Taiwan. And are we going to have stronger relationships or not? To me, this announcement said that we are going to have stronger relationships and that Phoenix and our global presence will continue to grow. The deal is $1.6 billion with a B. Even just the construction sales tax alone will have a meaningful impact on our city. It will be meaningful to the school district in which it is located economically and be a huge generator of high wage jobs, the kind of jobs where you can have great benefits, have a family, and what we are aiming towards at the City of Phoenix. I did a fair amount of work at SRP in economic development and really trying to work towards these really advanced jobs with the highest tech manufacturing. And so it in some ways feels like a culmination of my pre-elected official life working together with my elected official life to bring this forward. A great success for all levels of government in the United States. We have had the school district has been very supportive, the state has been very supportive, and the federal government has been very supportive. I was personally grateful to the U.S. Commercial Service for their help on our delegation. And since we are talking about women in global leadership, I shall confess that probably the only gender focused moment that I had that was a little bit negative on this delegation was my own fault. I did not realize when we had our big roundtable lunch with semiconductor executives that everyone was waiting for me to eat. I don't know if it's, I needed Mel to tutor me in the ways of international. I should have known, but I just never assumed that everyone was looking for me to eat first, and the U.S. Commercial Service had to help educate me. I better start eating sooner. We were all going to get very, very hungry. So maybe a good example of a time when I, as a relatively younger woman, should have taken more seriously my role and paid more attention to some of the details. And I apologize to everyone who got a little bit hungry because my international protocol was not up to snuff. But with help, I finally figured it out, and we did eat. And apparently, it was not such a negative impression that our partners from Taiwan decided not to partner with the city of Phoenix. So the project is moving forward. They are going to be here this month, and we should continue to have some big announcements around that project and just growing international projects with the city of Phoenix. I am very optimistic for the future. And one of those reasons is our partnership with Thunderbird School of Global Management. I was on the city council when we worked to bring them to downtown Phoenix. We are a partner at the $12 million level, so a very significant investment from our perspective, and a sign that we as a city are taking our role in the international economy very, very seriously. When I was a councilwoman, the Thunderbird moved into my council district, and now I am loving watching our skyline change as they get their more permanent home. I don't want to take away the Dean's thunder, but we are talking about how the city could participate in the global hub, and I understand the Global Chamber of Commerce will also have a role there. So we'll be bringing International Arizona, International Phoenix together in that hub. And I think the amount of innovation and partnerships will likely grow exponentially as we bring so many smart people together from so many corners of our planet in one place. A lot to look forward on the international stage. And I am already, the poor dean, every time, he probably is going to be nervous about talking to me because I have so many project ideas for his students for capstone projects and others, but we are going to enlist them in everything from global transportation corridors to, I'm still optimistic we're going to get more international flights in and out of Sky Harbor. We had great momentum during my first, I would say, 9 months as mayor, and made multiple international air service announcements. COVID has slowed that, but I suspect will come rearing back. Phoenix is likely to recover ahead of many of our peer markets in the United States. A major construction trade publication just surveyed construction in the United States. Instead of the top 10 construction markets, only one, the Phoenix metro area, actually grew and added during COVID-19, whereas the rest of the country is really seeing significant slowdown. We just got our July numbers for different sales tax receipts at the city, and it was in many cases much higher than I had expected in areas including commercial property and general sales tax. So we don't know what is to come, and we certainly at the city are going to take COVID-19 incredibly seriously. We don't usually do public health at the city, but have now done more than 60 testing locations because our community needed it. And we're starting already to talk about vaccine delivery, and then more urgently flu shot delivery. The city has traditionally not been in the flu shot business, but we are likely, particularly folks who do not have insurance, to get in that area because we want everyone to be safe and healthy so that we can come back stronger and smarter than we entered this very difficult year and really achieve Phoenix's potential both locally and on the international level. So I think we are not through COVID-19 in any way, but real reasons for optimism. And with you as partners, we are going to be leaders in international ties, international manufacturing, from advanced vehicles to advanced semiconductors. So thank you for all you've done to build the economy so that we're at this point, and so that a grateful mayor can make a statement like that. And with that, I will conclude and let this all-star panel group get to work.
Fantastic. Great message. And you're absolutely right. Global Chamber, it hasn't been announced yet, but we'll be moving into the new headquarters in downtown Phoenix. So we're really happy and pleased about that. And actually, Sanjeev gave me an update on that yesterday. He'll probably say more later. Before we lose you, I just wanted to turn it over to Mel. Mel, you did win that award last year. I forgot to mention that. Did you have anything that you wanted to say to the mayor?
The only thing I would say, Mayor Gallego, is you need to own your leadership, because as you were describing the dinner issue, that was the reason they were waiting for you, because you were the leader in the room. And I think it's a good lesson for all of us as women leaders, that we're not necessarily raised to own our leadership. And I've been so pleased with your growing into it, and best of luck for the future too.
Good advice. Thank you. I should have just had Mel sitting next to me, then everyone would have been.
We all need Mel sitting next to us, Mayor Gallego.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like Rachel Maddow or something, that like with MSNBC or something. So I really feel honored and really appreciate that you were able to share your information today, and all the accomplishments. We're just so proud of what you've been able to do so far. And City of Phoenix is on the way up, and a lot of that is due to your leadership, not just as mayor, but as city council person before that. So thank you for everything.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're now going to transition into our panel. And before we do, I'm going to turn it over to Mel. I do want to mention our sponsors before we do that, and then I'll turn it over to Mel to kick things off. Mel, we have 5 sponsors actually, and one of them is the City of Phoenix. So they're members of Global Chamber. We launched in City Hall 5 years ago with previous Mayor Stanton, with several hundred people and the leadership of Hank Marshall, who the mayor mentioned. We really appreciate the long time that the city has supported this crazy idea of Global Chamber. I mentioned to several people that my wife is one of those people that, unless it's in her hand, she doesn't think it exists. So the dream of Global Chamber to her is always a crazy thing, and never really kind of got it. But last Monday, she came into work and she saw that our membership is way up and the success stories are way up. And she told me, gee, I think you're right. This thing is going to be really successful. 5 years later, it took her to say that. That's amazing. So, but a lot of that is, and all of that is because of our members. And thank you for sticking with us, City of Phoenix, and for sponsoring this event. Thunderbird has also been the inspiration for Global Chamber, so we really appreciate their sponsorship today. And Kylie San Miguel, who's also on the line, you'll be able to see her. If you have any questions, feel free to chat to her, and she'll be able to help you with any questions you have about Thunderbird. Squire Patton Boggs is the third of 5 sponsors, and they've been one of the first 5 members of Global Chamber. Jamie and I sat down after we had the launch in City Hall, and we came up with this idea. Basically, we, meaning she, came up with this idea, and I thought it was a great idea. And so we really thank you, Jamie. She's on the panel this year instead of moderating. So thank you, Jamie, for your leadership and for your collaboration all these years. And then finally, I'd like to introduce a 4th sponsor who's relatively new to Phoenix, and it's Sunflower Bank. And so this is a bank that is in 5 states, and Scott Ubetta is the vice president who is, I spoke with. He's a relatively new member, and he said, hey, we're looking to grow in the city of Phoenix, and we're looking in the Phoenix metro area, and they have been growing significantly. They're primarily focused in on Texas and Arizona, and so very growth states. So Scott, thank you for your joining Global Chamber and sponsoring today, and we look forward to continuing to support the success and growth of Sunflower Bank. And then finally, kind of also a longtime member and a real strong supporter. The mayor mentioned commercial real estate, but Lee and Associates and Mark Pierce, my goodness, what great service he provides to people who are landing in Phoenix. And Lee and Associates is all over the United States, and Mark plays a leadership role with that. He's been amazing with landing companies within Phoenix, one of whom is Sign, a member of Global Chamber. They decided to move from Dubai and pass over San Francisco, and they chose Phoenix because of many different reasons, but some of it is cost and some of it is technology leadership that the mayor and others have really been leading for Phoenix. So a lot happening here. We really appreciate your sponsorships, all of you, all of our members. And so with that, I'd like to turn over the panel to Mel Sanderson. Thank you, Mel, for your help on this.
Absolutely, Doug. You know, I especially after we spoke, I was thinking a lot about this panel and the timing of this panel, and in a sense, the significance of our all being here today. One of those areas of significance is 100 years. 100 years since equality was more or less declared for women. And yes, we have made strides. That is undeniably true. In my lifetime, we have made great strides. And yet, look how far we still have to go. Look at how much remains to be done. And it makes me wonder, with this COVID, and it being such a signal for change, and it forcing a moment of pause and reflection on the world, if it's a moment where we can really shift the dynamics to a 50-50 split to what really is equality, where men honor women for our capabilities in the way that women admire men for theirs. Wouldn't that be something? So I'd like to actually start our conversation today by reflecting on the role of women as global leaders, particularly in this time of crisis. There's been a lot of press reporting, well substantiated by facts, that the countries in the world doing the best in responding to this pandemic are in often many cases led by women. Australia, Germany, New Zealand, there's examples of this. So I'd like to begin our conversation today by tossing out the question to all of you to answer from your own perspectives. Why do you think that is? Why are these nations led by women doing better in this crisis? And what lessons could global leadership learn from what these women are doing today? Jaime, why don't we start with you?
Like I said, Mel, turnabout is fair play. So thank you, first of all, Doug and the Global Chamber, and to my fellow panelists for having me on and not just unceremoniously kicking me out when year 5 came around. Mel, to answer your question, I think it's a couple of things, but I think first I will attack it from the emotional intelligence quotient. In a pandemic like this, which is completely unprecedented, people don't have a rule book for it. You know, women and men are dealing with a confluence of factors, from work security, whether it's having a job or having clients, losing accounts, things like that. Needing to step up and deal with those dependent on you in your families, whether it be children who you're taking care of and needing to homeschool, at least right now in America and a lot of places, to elderly folks in your families who need security and additional care and and need to have their health prioritized as well as everyone else. So I think, women by nature are nurturing and empathetic. And I think that one of the things, at least at Squire Patton Boggs, that we are receiving feedback on is that our folks are responding very well to straight up communication about where we're at and where we think things are going to be. And there's been a caring side to the law firm that has really emerged and isn't typical of law firms. And I think people have responded really well to that. We have a gentleman at the very top of our organization, Mark Ruhlman, but he's actually done fantastic things to help women. And just next week at Squire, we're hosting our very first women's empowerment event. It's a week-long event with daily networking sessions, keynote speakers, breakout panels, and it's just, completely dedicated to the advancement of women. And so to pull something like that off, particularly during this time, I think, is an example of the breakout thinking that we need from everyone, frankly.
Thank you, Jamie. Hey, Mel, before you continue, I do want to just introduce the panel very quickly. Jamie is a partner at Squire Patton Boggs. We also have Elizabeth Fretheim. She's the head of global business development for Nikola Corporation. Many of you, certainly those of us that have had some time in the automotive industry, know that the automotive industry is changing significantly, and Elizabeth, being part of a very significant organization for electric trucks and electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell and battery cell vehicles as well. She's got a long experience, not just in automotive, but she's also got some Canada experience in her background, which hopefully she'll share more about that as well. The third speaker is Sanjeev Kagram. He's the Dean and Managing Director of Thunderbird School of Global Management, and you'll see the headquarters in his background. He's an extraordinary leader. A lot of his career has been in California and the Palo Alto area, so he can definitely speak about California versus Arizona relative to the global world. He's just has a wealth of international experience and knowledge, and he's really been doing a great job with Thunderbird. 2 years on the job, and the school has never looked better. So thank you, Dean Kagram. And then finally, our fourth panelist is Laura Franco-French. She is the Senior Policy Advisor at the Office of the Mayor. You might have heard the Mayor Gallego mention Laura. She also has previous backgrounds with international experience as well. In fact, she has a master's in foreign service from Georgetown. And she's had other roles that have prepared her for the success now that City of Phoenix has in terms of building not just a good strategy, but now actually implementing it for the benefit of the region. So thank you all for being panelists, and I turn it back to Mel. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I should have reminded you to do that before I opened my mouth. So shared blame, 50-50. I noticed on the chat box that we're getting some feedback too. There was a comment made about women leaders and communication and collaboration. So just to pick on my next victim, and I forgot, Rita Marco from Phoenix Sister Cities highlighted that the president of Taiwan is a woman, and they also had an outstanding track record on dealing with the pandemic. So as we're at the moment on a political front, let me invite Laura to address this issue.
Well, thank you so much, Doug and Mel, for putting this together in the Global Chamber. This is wonderful to see colleagues. I've been working from home since March, so it's wonderful to see all of you. But I think, like you said, Mel, Mayor Gallego is very humble, and we are extraordinarily lucky to have her in the city of Phoenix leading us through this. But I think during COVID, we saw her leadership rise in a way that certainly she didn't expect, taking on this office a little over a year ago. But I think it's shown through, women know how to ask for other people. Sometimes we don't know how to ask for ourselves. I have certainly had that through my experience. Sometimes we don't know that we need to let our leadership shine, that we need to talk about ourselves. But when it's about other people, especially taking care of other people, and COVID showed that we were not prepared. We needed to make sure that our fellow residents did not get sick. We needed to make sure that our hospitals were not overwhelmed. So getting on a national stage and asking for PPE, asking for testing from the federal government, putting in place before anyone in Arizona a masking ordinance. I think it's very much a nurturing role. And when we see that others need us, we can step in. And I think that's part of why women rise in these occasions.
No, absolutely. And Elizabeth, turning to the automotive industry and thinking sort of historically of women leadership, women at the very top as CEOs in the industry have kind of a mixed record, and there's been a lot of argument about successful leadership in that sort of a industrial segment. So as a woman in Nicola's ranks, how would you address that leadership issue and the characteristics that women bring that are refreshing, different, innovative?
Sorry, I had to get myself off mute. I'm still not used to the remote working, right? Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to be a part of this. You know, as I was thinking about this over the last couple of days, you know, I have been in male-dominated careers all of my life. I grew up with 3 brothers. You know, even our pets were generally male. So some people say when they get to know me that explains some things. So, and I joke, you know, when I'm the only female in our management team meetings, and if I hear she in anybody's, whenever somebody says she, I'm like, okay, wait a second, that's me. I got to pay attention. I know I'm the only one, but you know, Doug mentioned, you know, my history in Canada, and I grew up mostly in Canada, and I was assigned a project in the oil sands of Canada. And for those who aren't aware, it's I think still one of the largest proven oil reserves in the world, but it's you know, it's kind of an environmentally devastating project. And I don't say that in a critical way because I'm driving my car to the protest, right? Like I'm using the oil that's coming out of there, but you know, just saw that there was a better way. And up in that area, there are a lot of First Nations, you know, the Canada's equivalent to the tribes, you know, here, and we partnered with them on our projects. And, you know, at the time, this was when sustainability was still kind of more in the hands of Greenpeace and Sierra Club and things like that. It really wasn't a mainstream corporate objective. And, you know, in partnering with them and bringing them into our management, we could start to see that, you know, caring about the environment could be a part of business and actually was good for business. And so, you know, I look forward to the time when we start to see that business isn't just about logic and numbers, and that we can see that empathy and nurturing and humanity and emotion are also part of business, right? And that's part of it. And it's, you know, I find that the other thing that's been interesting in my career, and I was actually just talking to someone here the other day about this, is especially during times of crisis and stress and, you know, just kind of hardship, if you will, I found in my career that, you know, and again, I'm mostly in male-dominated fields, that, you know, I almost feel like I need my own psychiatrist's counselor's office, right? Everybody's, you know, they're kind of coming to me, and I think it's the nurturing aspect of women, and that we listen and that we're thinking outside of ourselves, and we think about compromise, and we think about how we can help, and so people just gravitate towards that, you know, like I said, especially in times like this. And I was kind of looking up some things, and the CEO of IBM put out a pledge, a work from home pledge. And one of the things I loved that he had on there, and it was a he, so, you know, men are part of this as well, and they're starting to see the transition here, was, you know, I pledge to be kind. And I think that's so important in this time right now, is for us to just be, just be kind and just be thinking about, other people outside of ourselves. At our work, we've kind of made a pledge that if you decide what's best for you in this, if you feel comfortable coming to work, come to work. If you don't, stay home, but if you do come to work, you still need to be cognizant of how other people feel, right? So if, you still need to wear your mask and social distance and all of those things that, I think it's made people very aware that they need to be thinking outside of themselves, that this isn't all about ourselves and how do we take care of others.
Sanjeev, you knew I was coming to you next. It seems as though, just as a generality, that the world of academia has been more willing to embrace women and allow women to succeed than many other sectors of our society. And obviously, there have been, as movies have recently shown us, those moments when women played critical roles in the space program, for instance, but were not overtly recognized, especially if they had the double calamity of being women of color. But nonetheless, they contributed significantly and eventually were recognized and brought forward to the limelight. And we've seen women presidents of universities, even here with Northern Arizona University, although unfortunately President Chang is retiring, but a woman in charge of a university. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the psychology or the underlying why academia has seemed to be more open to equality.
Well, it's a great question, Mel. And before I answer it, I want to just thank you for your leadership. You have been such a great leader for us locally, nationally, and globally. Mayor Gallego, like you said, Doug, to add to your opening, as Laura will confirm, Mayor Gallego was selected as a young global leader with the World Economic Forum very recently, which I was. Much at a younger age, I will say, being completely honest. So, we're so incredibly proud, and we are here to support you, Laura and Mayor Gallego, in all that you do. Jaime, thank you for all that you do in the legal field and beyond. And Elizabeth, if I could start with your final point to answer Mel's question. But before I do, just want to put one more plug in for Doug and the incredible leadership, the Global Chamber, stand side with the Global Chamber and all the great priorities, obviously making Phoenix a global city, bringing the world together, and our focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and particularly women's leadership in business and beyond. Look, Mel, let's take the Thunderbird School. The first class of the Thunderbird School in 1946 had no women, not a single one, right? Today, we're 50-50 across the board, undergraduate, graduate, and only since I've been in, 50% on our leadership team. When I came in, we had, just to show you that while academia has been perhaps further along, we have so much more work to do. When I came in, the differential in pay between senior female faculty and senior male faculty was 35%. 35%. I'm proud to say that in our first 2 years, we have equalized that completely, 100%. There's complete equality within 2 years. So where does that come from for me personally? Doug mentioned my mother. You know my background. I'm a refugee from Uganda. And when we came to the United States from refugee camps in Italy to the United States, my mother took over the family. My father had lost everything and really was a shell of himself. And it was her, not only, and I want to build on what Elizabeth said about, and Laura and Jaime, compassion, but her resilience. And so when you think about the previous question about the times of COVID, we all are talking about resilience. And in my own experience, certainly with my mother, who's truly my most important hero and mentor, it's that resilience that is so fundamental alongside compassion. And when you bring resilience and compassion together, and by and large, women are better on both fronts, we actually get some great outcomes. On the academic front, look, there's been tons and tons of debate and scholarship and work. A lot of the data that Doug was mentioning comes out of the academy. We have incredible, women faculty members that are driving and leading us forward. I mean, I will give a great positive statistic that if we took not the Fortune 500 in the United States, but women-led businesses, and took the total GDP of women-led businesses in the United States together, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Just think about that for a second. Women-led businesses in the United States, not, they're not often the top, 100 or whatever, but if you put them all together, how remarkable is that? On the academic front, there are many more, as you said, university presidents and university leaders out there, but we still have a long way to go. And certainly in this time, not only of absolute necessity of advancing gender equality, but obviously, racial equality. And so, as you talked about, the double challenge of women of color, as well as people of color more generally. At Thunderbird, we've done, in addition to what I just mentioned, I just want to share 3 or 4 really critical moves. One is that we have a new task force called Global JEDIs, JEDIS, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Sustainability. Its focus, it has students, faculty, staff, alumni, community partners, and we are setting up immediate actions and medium-term and long-term to be the most diverse in every way global leadership management business school in the world. That is my commitment, and that's our commitment. We're already on our way because we have a new center on global family business and entrepreneurship. As Doug and Mel, around the world, family businesses are the primary form of business, and most of those family businesses are led by women in most parts of the world. And so a big focus of that center is going to be on women-led family businesses around the world, and particularly G2 and G3 transition, which historically have gone from men to men, the larger companies, but are increasingly transitioning from men to the fathers to their daughters. Third, as you all know, we have this incredible program on women's entrepreneurship around the world with Thunderbird for Good and Kelly Kreiser. So we're all in on this front. But it goes back to leadership, and whether it's in women leaders, or as we've heard on the panel, us as men have to take responsibility. And so if I don't deliver on my commitment to equality across the board, and particularly when it comes to gender equality, then I should be out. It's that simple. So thank you so much for having me.
Doug, did you want to ask a question, or you want me to keep going?
Oh, please, you're doing great. Awesome. Thank you all for the first round of questions. I do, just from a process standpoint, we have about 25 minutes left. And so if you have questions that you'd like to ask as an audience member, please do. I see that there is some conversations and comments happening. So please keep those coming in, and we'll try to address those along the way. If we can't, we'll address it after, but please do make your comments, and feel free to connect that way as well. Mel, you're doing amazing.
Yeah, speaking of the chat box, a couple of book recommendations that are circulating there: Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands, which is a really good one, and one that I had not personally read, but which sounds astonishing, How to Be a Perfect Stranger. And both of those, as the titles suggest, go to that, how you own your leadership in different cultural situations. So it could be good reads for everybody. And I want to come back to this idea of leadership. I saw a really disturbing poll once that was taken among women between the ages of 18 and 30. And the question was very simple. What does leadership look like to you? And the reason I found it disturbing was most of the responses in one way or the other answered men. Whether it was, oh, it's my dad, or oh, it's my CEO, or oh, it's, my teacher. It was so infrequent that they mentioned anything that seemed female. So I want to ask everybody on our panel, and this time I'm going to start with you, Sanjeev. What does leadership look like to you?
It's a great, there's a lot of discussion about global mindset, Mel, in the chat box. And for us at Thunderbird, that's the beginning of leadership. One has to have a global mindset. To that, we've added 2 other key mindsets that we believe are absolutely essential to the sort of the mental side of leadership. And that is an inclusive mindset and a digital mindset. Those three, in my view, are absolutely essential for the 21st century leader, whether they be women or men or other genders that we know we have to pay attention to in this world. And the other part, though, is very much the soft skills that our other panelists were talking about, which, you know, I hate even using the term soft skills because they're really the hardest skills, right? That's the hardest stuff. And I think the most important part of that goes back to this notion of, you know, leaders have to make decisions. You know, my sons and my stepdaughter, you know, always like, boys, Dad, you're making so many decisions every day. Don't you get tired? Every moment of the day, there's a decision to be made. And to be able to make decisions, but do so with those three mindsets working: an inclusive mindset, a global mindset, a data-driven, we're going to base it on the evidence and the science and the facts, but to do that with compassion and kindness and generosity, that's a hard set of things to do when everybody's stretched, and particularly now in the context of a pandemic where we don't have the normal interactions. You know, we'd love to be around a table doing this rather than just, you know, doing it on Zoom. We've adapted. Thunderbird ASU, we all have adapted. So I think that for me, leadership is about that. It's about the intersection of those three mindsets, but then being able to be able to deliver that, Mel, with compassion and kindness and generosity, and self-reflection. And it's a journey, as you know, Mel. We're never fully there. It's a leadership journey, and it's not an individual journey. We need our mentors, we need our partners, our friends, our spouses, our children, and certainly the entire community. So it's about the culture of leadership, in my view. Thank you.
Okay, what I hear you saying is sort of comprehensive decision making with compassion. Okay. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo on the Hollywood Square screen before me. Laura, let's go to you next.
Thank you. Well, it was just making me think as I was also, as Sanjeev has mentioned, I had an incredibly strong mother. She was an MD and just a community organizer. So I always thought, seeing the reflection of my mom, that strong women had to be smart and decisive. And so I had that example growing up. But also, I had Sandra Day O'Connor. So Justice O'Connor was sworn in when I was young, and I saw that reflection of a very intelligent woman who studied, was focused on her career and family. So I thought leaders came from Arizona and they were women. And so I still look at that in the women who I admire. And I think it's really important to see that reflection, that diversity, that equity. So now we're finally learning it's not just what we had in mind, but we need the diversity of sexual orientation, of race, of gender, of income equality, of socioeconomic backgrounds. And now we're kind of looking at all of that for our leaders in these movements that we've had in the last couple of years, the strength to stand up. So someone like, I hate even saying his name, but Harvey Weinstein was allowed for decades to dominate because he had that power. So I think it's that strength of standing up and saying, this is wrong, even if I lose my job or if I'm going to be shamed for it. But it's intelligence and it's strength and compassion and really caring about other people more than you care about your ego, so that you are looking for a broad set of solutions that don't just impact you and your family and people who look like you, but the incredible diversity that is around us.
Excellent. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so you know, it's funny, I had just touching on the mom aspect. My mom was a stay-at-home mother, but as I mentioned, I have 3 brothers. There were 4 of us, and she used to get so upset when we would go someplace and somebody, you know, asked for her, you know, employment. She said, "Oh, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom," and she would get a response of, "Oh, so you don't work?" And she's like, "I've got 4 kids. Trust me, I work." You know, like that was, and so she was, you know, I mean, she has a degree and everything else, and you know, but I think it's a matter of, you know, we need to cherish people for whatever contribution they're bringing in whatever capacity. So As I think, and I apologize for bringing up Canada, but when I was up there, I had the privilege to participate in what was called the Governor General's Leadership Conference, and what it was they put people from around the country applied to be part of this conference. I think they would have like 10,000 applicants and 250 people would go, and we would be put in these teams that would then travel to various areas of the country, and we would have a theme that we would be kind of researching, if you will. We traveled around talking to business and community leaders about that theme, and it was always leadership, and then something on the side of that, and for ours it was community. But these teams were made of people from the private sector, people from government, people from labor. You had people from different races, different genders, people with disabilities. So it was a very, very diverse group, and all kind of type A personalities. And I say, it was one of the most fantastic experiences, biggest growing experiences of my life. It was also so completely emotionally and physically draining. I slept and felt like for 2 weeks at the end of it. But for me, the importance of diversity was one of the biggest learnings. I grew up, like I said, with 3 brothers. I was always trying to prove I could do whatever they could do, and trying to be a boy almost, right, with a lot of this. And, going through this experience and just seeing that how important it is for us to bring our own strengths, right? And that's why diversity is so important, is you're bringing a much more well-rounded viewpoint to the problems that you're trying to solve. If we're all coming from the same perspective, we're not going to get the best results. We're not going to get the most innovative, creative ideas. And so, I try with women that I mentor and women that come into our organization, again, since we're in such a male-dominated field, come in and bring your strengths as a woman. That's what we need here. And it is tough, sometimes, like when you do, you bring the empathy or you bring the emotion into a decision that, somebody wants to put all to numbers. Sometimes, like you say, it's not well accepted, or people sort of, you can see them roll their eyes like, this is the emotion. And it's funny how often, a week down the line, well, whatever you had suggested, because not everything is about the numbers, right? It's about how people also emotionally react to things. And so, I really try to encourage people, whether it be male or female or different races, or even someone who looks, in quotes, looks the same, but has different backgrounds and different perspectives, bring those and honor those. And if somebody is not honoring them, that's a discussion that we have to have with that other person. That's not a problem with you that's trying to bring your strengths. It's a problem with the other side that's not accepting and not open to those other ideas.
Thank you. Jamie?
Mel, your topic is spot on. Actually, just this morning, I was reading about a new study that shows the double standards that women continue to face at work. And it's more of the same that we've been seeing for the last 20 years. If anyone remembers the Howard and Heidi Rosen study that was done by the Harvard Business Review back in, I think it was 2000. Heidi Rosen was a very successful, especially back in the era before the dot-com bubble, a very successful tech entrepreneur. The study basically focused on giving the case study to the participants, and assuming that the leader in the modality was Howard Rosen, a man, and then judging his performance under a certain skill set against a number of terms that were typically correlated in a military setting with positive performance. And then they flipped the script and named Howard Heidi. And so the boss became a woman. And what they found, what Harvard found, was that success and likability were positively correlated for men and negatively correlated for women. So when a man is successful, everyone likes him. And when a woman is successful, Mel, it's exactly what you were just saying. People of both genders, women included, liked her less. And that was from 2000. What I was just reading this morning comes from a Middlebury economist, Merton Abel. So he recruited 2,700 for his study sample. And, again, basically skipping to the end, what they found were, while there were no gender differences in the objective measures, one of the things that, I'm hearing from my panelists and that I said myself, and I completely believe it, compassion and some of those more typically female characteristics are what we've been citing this morning as having a positive effect in COVID and in leadership more generally. But again, this most recent study shows that if a woman leader works her best and tries to be analytical, people responded most often that she was bossy. And for men who were considered to be compassionate, they ticked off the box sweet most of the time. And so, Mel, what you said is real. It's out there. And, our daughters, our sons, as we're raising them, I think that what we've been saying this morning, all of the panelists, very insightfully, education, participation, and diversity need to really be at the top of mind.
I think this might be our last question, so I've been trying to sort of compress two into one, so forgive me if it gets complex, but there's a question going around about privilege and how some countries seem to be less troubled by the prevailing concept of privilege, and it makes me think about the word itself, privilege, and how in many ways it's juxtaposed with another important word, diversity. So the question I'd like to pose is twofold. Is leadership a privilege? And if so, why should that privilege be reserved only to men? And the second part of the question is, does more diverse access to privilege lead eventually to better, more inclusive, comprehensive decision-making and leadership that Sanjeev was referring to? Oh, who shall be the first victim for this question, I wonder? Let's see, I already picked on Jamie to be first once. I picked on Sanjeev to be first once. That leaves Elizabeth and Laura. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah, what a great question. The first thing that came to my mind is the concept of servant leadership, right? And so I think that really makes me, I think that highlights that leadership is a privilege, to be able to lead others, to have others look up to you. It's something that you need to earn. It's not something that I think comes with a title. You have people in leadership positions that aren't leaders, right? And so I really do think it is a privilege to be there, and it's your responsibility to bring in the inclusivity and the diversity that you mentioned. And I kind of, going back to, I think it was something that Sanjeev said about, that inclusivity, you can have diversity, but you don't get the value of it until you have inclusivity. And so you really do, as I mentioned before, I think you just come up with better solutions. You become a better company when you ensure that inclusivity is there. And so, I would say I absolutely do think it's a privilege, and I think it's something that you need to think about and remember every day, that it is a privilege.
Thank you.
Can I jump in? Can I just build on? I
Yes,
completely
I
agree.
saw you.
No, I just, Elizabeth, I think you hit it right on the nail. I mean, you know, leadership is such a privilege. It's such a great opportunity. You know, there's a famous poem by Tagore, who's among my favorite poets. And if I could just read it to our panelists and to our audience. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. And when I think about leadership and, you know, what you were saying about servant leadership, that's what it is. And, you know, at the end of the day, a leader is only judged by how much she or he empowers those all around them, him or her or them, to be successful and to make a difference in the world. And so in some sense, the privilege is about extending privilege, if I could put it that way, and ensuring that all have shared privilege. And I think that if we could have a world of shared privilege, then we would be a much better world. And that's why it's absolutely essential for us to continue to advance inclusiveness. And I have to say, that's why Arizona State University is such an important, you know, the mandate that we have, the charter, that we judge ourselves by who we include, not who we exclude, and how we support them to succeed. And I think that all leaders in some way should have that as part of their mantra. Thanks.
Beautifully said. Jaime?
I couldn't agree more with Sanjeet and Elizabeth so far. It absolutely is a privilege. I'm going to take an unpopular view here. I don't believe that it is reserved only for men, but I think that this gets back to one of the things that has been a theme over the last 5 years that we've been having this panel. When we look at, toward the end, about having action items, you know, it's and Mayor Gallego said it at the outset of this panel, take your seat at the table. But it's more than that. Once you're sitting there, give, lead. That's your opportunity. You know, it's not enough to say, oh, you know, Elizabeth, like you, I'm often the only woman in a room full of men. And it was only recently that the, you know, that the, oh, you there, bring coffee for the whole, you know, room kind of thing was dropped as pretense. And that's not enough, though, you know, to just be there and say, phew, they're getting their own coffee now. Take the reins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laura?
Well, I was thinking of, again, of growing up Catholic and going to Catholic schools that really emphasize social justice. So it was always in me that it is service to others. That is your leadership. To those whom much has been given, much is expected. And I took that very seriously. So as a woman also trying to honor those who came before us, I got to hear Maya Angelou once, and she talked about, don't feel guilty for the sacrifices that everyone made for you to be in this position. Those women who suffered tremendously, for you to have suffrage, Harriet Tubman, for you to, don't feel guilty about that, but know that going forward, that is your obligation. So I always try to remember that as I'm mentoring people, you look and see how you treat others. So never treat interns badly, never treat staff badly, never treat those who are serving you at a restaurant badly. So those are lessons that I think it is a privilege, and you have to extend it to everyone around you. And a smart leader builds a really smart team full of people who are diverse of thought, of all the other things I mentioned, gender, race, sexual orientation. And you really need to be thinking about that as you're a leader building a team. Make sure that you are inclusive of communities that you aren't even thinking about, age, all kinds of things. So I think it's a deep privilege that we have to honor.
Well, Doug, I'm tossing it back to you because it's time for the closing words of wisdom and call to action, and that's definitely your role.
That was a very powerful discussion. Just really some great insights. I couldn't write them down fast enough, so I think definitely we'll want to watch the recording of this, and we will have a recording and a blog post about this. We just have a few minutes. In fact, we have 4 minutes and 4 panelists, and so what I'd like to do is just wrap it up with each one of the panelists, maybe giving 45 seconds of to Mel's point, what's next, and how are you moving forward to have an impact going forward? And what drives my question is personally frustration that there are so many people lost, and on the topics that you all understand about the value of this. And I don't know where to start sometimes. Sometimes there's so many of them, I can't handle them all. And I can't even address and talk to each one, and feel like also that it's frustrating that I'm not going to get through. So why even do it? So how are you impacting the world, and what kind of things would you like to leave with the audience on how they can make a difference as well? And let's just go right down the list. Maybe Jaime, start with you, and what's your wrap up?
Sure. So one of the biggest things I think that I wanted to communicate today is a reminder, and I thought when I was thinking of this over the last few days, from the the pre-flight safety videos on the airplanes that we used to fly on. Remember those? When the voice would come on and say, in the event of an emergency, put your mask on yourself before helping others. We have so many huge issues to tackle together. And I think one of the things that we need to absolutely remember is that taking a moment to prioritize your own self-care really needs to happen, because if you're at wit's end, and it's hard not to be during these times, you're not going to be able to go out and tackle these really huge issues. And so I think that's just a PSA that I wanted to pass along. And then, again, just to reiterate, open lines of communication, I think, are more important now than ever, particularly if you're in a leadership position, to the people who are seeking your guidance, seeking your leadership, seeking your advice, as well as for those that you're trying to mentor during all of this. That task has become really difficult as we are separated from one another. So, I think just focus on yourself, and then turn to the big work that we have ahead.
Jaime, great comments. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything. Elizabeth, great to learn more about you today. What's your advice? How are you handling this? And then what's your advice to others in terms of making progress going forward?
Yeah, I so much appreciate being here. I think this topic is extremely important, and especially in times like these. And I love Jaime's remarks that we do need to, take care of ourselves so that we can be there to take care of others. And to remember, I think another, if I can plagiarize Sanjeev in saying that, the soft skills are often the hardest to bring forward. And so to really kind of dig deep and find those, and remember that, with a lot of the things that are going on right now with the injustices and the inequalities, we often leave it to those that are marginalized to fight the fight. And we all need to be part of that fight, right? So if you're talking about, raising women's issues, and I've had, discussions with the executives here that, it can't just be the women that are standing up and fighting for this. This is a fight for everyone. And so, to have them be a part of it. So whether it's, women leadership, or like I said, other inequalities and injustices, that we all need to be a part of raising each other up.
Thank you. Very, very well said. Sanjeev, you were the token man this time. Congratulations on that. Prior, we had Hank Marshall with City of Phoenix, and Norm over at Bank of America, who last year talked about some of the progress they've made. Really appreciate you being that singular man on the panel, and I thought everything that you've said so far is just really, really profound. what are your tips on how you're handling this, and then how you would suggest others do as well?
Well, I mean, I think I want to add a third. We've talked a lot about resilience, and my panelists have been so eloquent in talking about that. We've talked a lot about compassion, and that's absolutely a second part of it. I think a third critical part of it is courage. We have to have the courage of our convictions. We have to take the hard decisions to advance equality and inclusion. And at the end of the day, we get lots of criticism. I can't tell you how much criticism I've gotten over the last 2.5 years for the stances I've taken. And I'm sure my wonderful peers on the panel, and I know you, Doug, and Mel have had that. But in the end of the day, it's our values that are our touchstones. And if we believe in inclusion, if we believe in access and equity, then we have to have the courage of our convictions to make those decisions and to stand up to the fire sometimes it brings, and know that we are on the side of the right and the good. So that would be my last things. And just to say that on the call to action, we've already, as part of this Global JEDI's task force, have made a commitment to having a center on global women's leadership at Thunderbird. If we don't get that done in the next 2 years and at the longest, and hopefully the next year, then I'll take it as a failure on my part in terms of my leadership. So I'm going to need your help, Doug, Melissa, all of our great panelists, certainly the mayor, to make that happen. We want to create the most global and diverse leadership management business school in the world, and we need to have that center to drive us forward. So thank you again.
Thank you for creating so much good trouble. I really appreciate it. And the courage cannot be overlooked. Great add to the conversation. Laura Franco-French, how about you?
Well, I just want to say one thing. Sanjeev is not a token man. There are token men, but Sanjeev really puts into practice, and I'm so thankful and proud of the empowerment of women and everyone who's diverse, and that is not common. So you don't have to be a woman to be empowering women to be a leader for women. And I say that as well. I am Latina. I say Mayor Gallego has a Latina heart, and many others do, because you work to empower others, and that is a huge strength and something I applaud. So I think political participation is something that recently I've been encouraging women to run for office, and I've had friends run. My sister is now running for a state Senate seat, and it was really conversations of, if we want to make changes, we have to step up. I don't want to run, but I have friends and family who were willing to do it, to take classes with different organizations like Emerge. Republicans have Dodie London, and learn the basics and be encouraged and empowered to do it. So I think political participation is key. And I just wanted to bring up one stat that I saw. There was a McKinsey report in 2016 that estimated that closing the world's gender gap in workforce participation would add 28 trillion with a T to the global GDP by 2025. So I think encouraging women to run for office and encouraging leaders to make sure there's pay equity are two very key things moving forward.
Great thoughts. And definitely when you see something, say something, and that works both ways. When you see something bad, saying something, and sometimes that takes a lot of courage to do that. And when somebody's doing some great work, acknowledge it. And so I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I'd like to acknowledge that. You're all spectacular. From Mayor Kate Gallego today, thank you so much. Jaime Daddona, Elizabeth Fretheim, Sanjeev Kagram, and Laura Franco-French, and our moderator today, Mel. Boy, what a great conversation. What do you think?
I had so much fun, and I learned so much. So thank you again, Doug, for giving me the privilege and the pleasure of leading the discussion today.
The privilege is all mine. And so Mel and I think, pretty simpatico, because the lump sum of our preparation for today was, well, let's just see how it goes.
Basically, yeah.
And it went really well, because Mel is amazing, and then all of our speakers today were extraordinary. Global Chamber presents this event once a year. We're looking forward to already, I think, at least I am, to the 6th annual next year. And so we'll start working on that.
At Thunderbird next year.
And it'll be at Thunderbird, exactly right.
Brand
So
new
it's
global headquarters. We welcome it.
the September of next year, and fingers crossed, we'll be able to do this one live right there in the lobby off the Global Chamber office, and wait till you see the inside. The building looks great from the outside. There it is right behind Sanjeev. The inside is amazing, and it's world class in every way. So definitely plan on next September for the 6th annual one. And we're involved with all sorts of events. We even have one later today where we have someone talking about being in the global tribe and managing teams internationally. We have one on League of Opportunities tomorrow where our members are presenting their opportunities. We have these things continually. And so if you're new to Global Chamber and you want more information, send an email to info@globalchamber.org. We're happy to share more. Or if you're a member and you're looking for help in any way, one of my, honestly, little bit of a frustration is sometimes people don't ask for help when they need it. I think a couple of you touched on that point, that women tend to be somewhat like that, but people tend to be like that sometimes. And so if you're out there and you need help with whatever it is, let us know. We want to help. These are not normal times. These are difficult times, and certainly there are people that are being successful. Unfortunately, we have been. That gives us an opportunity to help out and be a servant leader, as we've talked about today. And so that's what our goal is. That's what our hope is, and we've got to help each other, and we're dedicated to helping our members. So thank you everybody for participating today. We'll have a blog and the recording up on the Global Chamber website. If any of you have any questions, again, info@globalchamber.org. And I want to thank again everybody from the bottom of my heart. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Stay
great
safe
day.
and healthy, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie.